Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another Eye on Africa. My name is Awasar. I'm Assistant Director for Academic Affairs, and I am here at the African Studies Center, Michigan State University. Eye on Africa is our weekly webinar series, and I'm very delighted today to have Dr. Johnathan Choti as our speaker. A brief introduction. Dr. Choti is Assistant Professor of African Languages and Cultures at Michigan State University. He holds a PhD in Linguistics from MSU and MA and BA from Egerton University in Kenya. His MA thesis, Language and Hierarchy, the Linguistic Portrayal of the Gusii Woman, explored the representation of women in Eke Gusii language and discourse. He teaches Swahili and courses on African cultures, that is area studies and multicultural civilization, Africa, gender inequality and democratic debate in Africa, and gender diversity and sexuality in Africa. Dr. Choti is a recipient of the 2019 Mid-Michigan Spartans Quality in Undergrad Teaching Awards, 2020 Excellence Award in Interdisciplinary Scholarship, and 2020-21 Lilly Fellowship. He is a member of the review panel for the Humanities Research Grant Application for the Humanities and Arts Research Program and the Faculty-led CAL Task Force on Non-Tenure Stream Pathways. The Vice President and President-elect of the African Language Teachers Association, Dr. Choti was initiated into the Honor Society of Pi Kappa Pi as faculty at MSU on April 8, 2021. Thank you so much, Dr. Choti, for being here. You're a very regular attendee of Eye on Africa, so we're excited to have you today present.
Yeah, thanks so much, Dr. Saad, for that introduction. And I also thank the African Studies Center for this opportunity to speak to my audience today. I'm going to speak about language and gender in African cultures, but of course I'm not going to talk about all of the several cultures found in Africa, on the continent of Africa. I'm going to focus my talk to one main language and some data from Swahili. The focus of this talk is on Eke Gusii, the Eke Gusii language spoken by the Gusii people. This language is spoken in southwestern Kenya. So I will start by showing the sections of this talk, or the various parts of this talk. The audience from wherever you are, thanks so much for joining in. You are welcome. And I hope after my talk, we are going to have a lively discussion towards the end. I will give the objectives of the talk, the study questions for this work, introduce the socio-cultural profile of the Gusii people, or Abagusii. I will briefly introduce the relevant theoretical constructs, including linguistic gender, language as a system of science, the markedness, and the lexical gaps. I will then get into discussing gender marking in Eke Gusii and the Swahili. I will conclude after that. There are two objectives I have for this talk, to show that language reflects and reinforces gender patterns in a society. I will then explain the universality of the relationship between language and gender. The main questions I'm exploring in this work are, how are the two main sexes, that is male and female, reflected in the structure of Eke Gusii and Swahili? To what extent does the linguistic representation of gender mirror the socio-cultural reality? Those are my two questions. To talk about the socio-cultural profile of gender relations among the Gusii people, I consulted, I think, three sources which talk about the society, the advocacy society, and was mostly from the social perspective and also anthropological perspective. So this is what I found out. Men have authority over women and children. Male parents or the male parent in a household is the head of a household. As per the time these studies were undertaken, wife battering was, I hope it is not, common. Mothers encouraged daughters to persevere domestic violence. Dowry or bride price is key in any marriage. Leadership roles are set aside mostly for men in this community. Polygamy was or is common. This is a patriarchal system. Male children inherit family wealth, and the male child is valued over the female child. This community practiced, or maybe does practice, still male and female circumcision. Domestic chores are mainly for females in the household. And I recorded these facts from Silver-Smith 1999, 2001, and Choti 2015. That Choti is not me, it's somebody else. So that's the profile of in terms of gender among the advocacy whose language I'm going to analyze today. Let's look at some of the relevant theoretical constructs for this talk or this work. We in linguistics talk of linguistic gender, but this term has more than one meaning. The first one is when we are referring to how either of the two sexes, male and female, how they are represented, especially in relation to social and cultural differences, rather than biological differences. The second meaning of this term in linguistics refers to the grammar of languages, whereby we talk about either the nouns or pronouns being masculine, feminine, common gender, or neuter. So that one is just for language structure. It has nothing to do mostly with the sexes, the main two sexes I just mentioned above. So my focus will be on the definition number one. We also in linguistics talk about universals in linguistic marking of gender. Like what's the pattern across languages? How do languages represent the gender categories? Feminine in most common and universally is represented as other, whereby masculine is presented as the generic or sex neutral. We have examples in English. In English, we have terms like lion, lioness. So lioness is an exception. Male, female. You can see the exception as more syllables or a complex structure. Waiter, waitress, and man, and then we have woman. What's the implication of this universal representation of gender in language? So implication of gender bias for person perception. How do we perceive people with that kind of bias? What ideas and beliefs do we hold about women and men? So language can lead us to understand or to conclude what ideas and beliefs people or society holds towards the two genders. How do these values get transformed in social processes? Man equals human in the linguistic and cultural codes. That's really the point. Does language show us that? And that's what we see most in most languages. Man is always what would be considered the standard against which the woman is measured both cognitively and socially. Let's look at the relationship between language and culture. Culture is a learned and shared semiotic system of signs and meanings of which language is the most significant or unique. So language is really intertwined with the culture. They are really, you cannot separate them. And so that's why we have to examine our languages to see whether their structures can reflect the cultural processes we have on the ground. African cultures are highly patriarchal. I presented a profile earlier, and so they are good fertile grounds or targets for studying whether languages reflect that patriarchal structure we see on the ground. So thus African languages should be examined for linguistic encoding of sex roles. So in this study, I focused on Nkoc and a little data on Swahili. The other thing we look at is language as a system science. So linguistic science acquire meaning only in relation to other science. So that's very important because for you to get the meaning of one item, especially used for the genders, you have to look at the other item and see their relationship or where there are any gaps and what messages these linguistic items tell us all the science. Science on their own without relationship to other science, they don't communicate a full or a complete meaning. The other concept is markedness. One of the members of an opposition pair, like in the science system we talked about, is unmarked. What does it mean unmarked? It is when it represents either the entire category or its opposite member per excellence. Look at the two examples I have, tall and short, and the day versus night. And then there's an example on the side, how tall are you? In this language, in English, you will never hear people say, how short are you? So tall includes shortness. And that's so tallness is like, it's the standard, it's the unmarked form. When we talk about day and night, if you say, I spent a day, or you go for a trip and say, I spent one day. So that day is going to be 24 hours. But remember, that day includes also night. So day in this pair, day and night, as symbols. Day is by excellence in terms of that pair. It is used for it's the unmarked form, just like tall is the unmarked form. Can we see the same messages in the structure of Nkoc and Swahili as it relates to gender? That's what we are going to look at. Our last theoretical construct is lexical gaps in linguistics. In linguistics, the absence of a word in a particular place, in a lexical field, it just been a lexical field of a language. When we have that, for example, in English, there is no singular word that covers bull, cow, and calf, as we do have in goat, which covers billy goat, a nanny goat, and even a kid. You can see them there. So there's a linguistic gap when it comes to the conceptualization of bull, cow, and a calf. So this is going to be relevant when we look at the terms used for females and males in the two languages, especially in Nkoc. Now let's look at linguistic marking of gender in Nkoc. That map shows the ethnic groups, of course, and their languages spoken in Kenya. The language we are interested today, Nkoc is spoken on near the blue. The blue represents the Luo community. South of this Luo, we have the Kisi. It's a small community, but occupies a small area, but densely populated, about 2 million speakers. Now, in terms of basic introduction to Nkoc language, Nkoc has grammatical gender in nouns. We call them noun classes, or in Swahili, ngeli, za lugha. So grammatical gender classes are found in this language. It's a Bantu language, and most Bantu languages in Africa are known for their intricate noun classes. The plus human pronouns do not inflect for gender at all. If you want to say he or she, you say ere. If you want to say her, hers, or his, you want to say I, for example, kiaye, ekitabu kiaye, which would mean his or her book. So gender on pronouns is not required. Gender in pronouns is a covert category in this case. Sorry for that. Cultural context, however, can mark a masculine gender term to be unmarked or generic depending on the circumstances. Let's look at an example number 2. The word chisokoro, which means ancestors, the singular is esokoro, is derived from sokoro, which means grandpa. So when we look at, we're talking about ancestors. If this derived from sokoro, chisokoro, derived from sokoro, where are the grandmas? Can we have ancestors without women? I don't know where women are missing on in this one. So that's the kind of patterns we are looking at. Chisokoro ancestors taken from sokoro, which means grandpa. Women are missing on this one. A cultural context can also mark a generic term for feminine gender. And so this balances the question I had number in the data 2. Avanto can, in some context, can mean wife or wives, because in my culture, this is actually my culture, men are allowed to have more than one wife, but I have one for information, not 2. So avanto means people. So if the feminine here can be used to represent even the masculine, or can the avanto, which means people, can be narrowed down to mean a wife or wives. In this case, the female gender is promoted. Let's go to number 4, 5, and 6, and so on. But this one is data from Proverbs. We know what Proverbs are. They express wisdom. They are very short, and they are part and parcel of the culture, linguistic culture of most communities. Number 4, or proverb number 1. Erone yavagaka. The sitting room is for elder men. How gendered is this? So the sitting room, in terms of the structure of the household or houses in this community, the sitting room is set aside as a preserve for men. This is a place where men can meet and do their parties, they can drink, share meals, have conversations, which are only meant for men. And if you visit this community, you'll find that even when people sit in public meetings out there in the public places, you find that men sit separate. It's not a question of just in the family, even in the public setting normally, you get women aside and men aside. Is that a bad thing? It depends on the context and how you apply this proverb. It could be just showing about the division between the genders. It can also just mean that this place is a special place for the men members. Number 2 or number 5. Where elder men are, nothing goes wrong. Is that really true? Okay, maybe men in this community, but I don't think so. When I grew up in this community, in my neighborhood, most evenings you could hear women wailing, and then you are told so-and-so is beating their wife or their wives. That wasn't nice. So things went wrong there. So this one is really overemphasizing this. If this is the kind of wisdom we can bequeath our children, then I don't think this is true, that wherever men are, nothing goes wrong. This really portrays men as if they cannot make mistakes, as if they cannot make mistakes, and who else can make mistakes? Whoever is not mentioned here. So the female gender are the ones maybe who are going to make mistakes or make things go wrong. I don't know. So if this data is repeated number 5 twice, call it number 5-2 or B. Musaja karibuoye itiro rienyomba, that a man in his home is the pillar of the house. This you see is promoting men as well. A pillar is supposed to be like the mainstay, like the thing, like in this structure, if you remove it, then there's no house. So this imagery portrays men like they are the main men. Without them, that's not true. I lost my dad when I was 9, and then I was raised by my child, me and my others, my 6 siblings. Without our dad, which was unfortunate, but we were able to, our house remained intact under the leadership of my mom. So I wonder whether this wisdom in quotes, Musaja Karibuoye Itiro Denyomba, is true. However, depending on the application, it could mean that this proverb can really suit a situation where maybe the absence of a husband, maybe he has passed away or is away working, and only the mother and the children are home. Something negative happens to them. Somebody can easily say, because of the absence of the man in this family, that's why things are going wrong. So it depends on the context, but for sure, this proverb is promoting men and downplays the role of women in the household. Number 6, omusasha omuya noyo kulinga nkundi kagosowa muchi mogoko osara nyumba. A good man is one who carries something in his clenched hand, so that when he comes home, he brings joy. This proverb for sure is reinforcing the fact that the man is the one supposed to go out there and work and bring something home for the family. So it encourages hard work, it encourages men to work hard, and their contribution to the family will bring happiness to the children and to the mother. And maybe this aligns men to the public sphere and the women to the domestic, and things have changed. So if things have changed, are you going to apply this proverb today? Because my wife goes out too, she should come home with a clenched fist. These images, by the way, they just don't mean literally that. It's just meaning working out there and bringing this something food home for the family. So women can do this today. So this kind of proverb might not be very relevant today, where both genders are involved in working and supporting their families. Bakungumbaya komeno ya wasaliri. Women are good, but for their mouths make them bad. This proverb has two messages. It emphasizes the contribution of women in the community or in the family. Women are good. So if I were to tell about how women are good, I don't have the time. But I know the community emphasizes the positive contributions of women from getting children. And in fact, in a family, in this society, a man who is not married, it's like you are not complete yet until you get married. That's the contribution of women. If you are married and you don't have children, we are still waiting. Where are the children? And you can't get those children without your wife. So women are good. If you go talk about women are good, I can go on and on and on. But their mouths. So their mouth here is used symbolically to refer to what they say. Either some people cultures they are nagging, I don't know about that, or maybe they reveal secrets, I don't know. But this is would be used, the power would be used where a woman, as whatever she says or said, is going to be negative in these circumstances. But generally, that one doesn't mean their positive contribution to society as members of the Abba society is downplayed or is at stake. It's just to say whatever they say could be lighter, but their importance is emphasized in this proverb. Number 8, he or she who has many gods will never lack a sponsor. I hear the word sponsors are different connotation in Kenya today. That's not the sponsor I'm talking about here. The sponsor I'm talking about here is like women or children, girls were looked at in terms of wealth. They're gonna bring wealth to the family because of dowry. And that's their contribution. And then in teaching my cultures class at MSU, students feel like, you guys sell your guns. That's not good. No, we don't sell them. I can't afford my wife. You can't sell our guns. It's just the way society is structured. That's how we have organized our gender for the men and men. We didn't have to. Society is organized just as nature is organized. So we organize our dowry, our marriages in that particular way. Okay, I hear in some communities, even getting a wedding ring is very expensive. So that's how that society works. And that's how our society works as well. So those who have girls, they are going to raise them nicely, protect them, teach them, so that tomorrow they are going to get somebody deliver a proposal, a marriage proposal is going to be delivered. And so the sponsors here could be somebody who is going to bring home the marriage proposal, and it's going to result into dowry, and that's wealth for the family. So the more girls you have, in this case, the more promising your future is, the more or maybe positive you have about life. Number 9, omokungu omwegenu nogo sesenia somosacha. A faithful wife is a blessing to the husband. I don't know how to explain this. This is really a negative on the part of women. So men are not supposed to be faithful? Yeah, maybe yes, because they can marry many wives. So who are you going to be faithful to? Maybe that's the case, but I think this is for sure a dent on the image of women in this community. Omo kungunya getiara moe oboremo mborera aleme abuatumutwe. So men are the ones who inherit land as part of wealth in their families. So when they marry, if they have a woman who is rowdy, this woman, they are being advised to allocate her unproductive land so that when she cultivates it, she can feel the pain. So unproductive land is not going to yield any produce. So she's going to be like, it's a punishment. So this is like women should be punished. This is giving power to the man and giving a negative position to women. Apart from the Proverbs, I will move first to social identity terms we use in our language. Kin terms, life cycle terms, address or reference terms, the references for between spouses, and words for occupations. So table 1 shows that, just a minute, excuse me for a minute. Yeah. All right, so table 1, it shows kinship terms, males and female. You can see there are no gaps here. Tata for father as baba or mama for mother, iso, nyoko for father, mother, tata moke, mako moke for uncle and aunt, tata viera, mako viera for the in-laws, mother and father, mame, mako moke, omoko in-law is in both. Moiwa, we use the same term for nephew and niece. Sokoro, grandpa, as magukoro. So we have magukoro, and we don't use it for ancestors. That's the question. Mumurone, my son, Moisakone, my daughter, Mumuro Minto. We don't have like my brother. We use it like our brother, literally. It's our brother, Mumuro Minto. Next, so that one, you can see the genders are balanced very well until you give us a cultural context. Like I said about ancestors, where we say Chisokoro derived from Sokoro. Next, we have table 2, life cycle words. Like how do we represent our children as they grow? Which terms do we use when they are younger, the middle age, get married, and then they get old? Omwana for both, Omoisia for lad, Egesagane for lass. This is young children, boys and girls, especially who have not been initiated. So we have that. But that equality, that symmetry, like we have a term for Omoisia and Egesagane, doesn't just stay like that. If we have a cultural context, for example, where like young people disagree, okay, how are they going to swear or insult each other? They are going, they are not going to say Egesagane if they are boys. So Egesagane is a very common word used for insults. Even for Omoisia, yes, but in terms of hierarchy, Egesagane would be more painful, more penetrating in terms of the insult. Omomura for boy, Enyaroka for girl, almost a young man, we have Omoisake, and this is mostly for marriageable girl. Now, when you look at this data number 2, you see some gaps. So that's an example of lexical gaps. Like for example, when we say almost word sister, middle-aged woman, we don't have the counterpart for men. I really did not get any explanation for that lexical gap. Homogamy for a bachelor, I think I have an explanation. So if you can describe a man who is a bachelor, is for man, the counterpart on the females is missing. Why? And I think I have the explanation. Women were not expected to overstay at their parents' home. the sponsor I was talking about earlier on. Sponsors not come in and bring marriage proposals. So we normally in this family, in this community, women were not expected to go beyond the expected age for marriage. So that's actually maybe why we don't have an counterpart for bachelor. But for men, why could a man delay their marriage? There are so many reasons. They don't have the wealth, the dowry, for example, and other reasons. Then we come to omwekungi, virgin. Even if the English dictionary describes virgin for any person who has not had sexual intercourse since they have not, it's only restricted to women. In fact, I'm told even some cultures across Africa, they were conducting virginity tests for women. No, we don't have an counterpart for omwekungi. For what? For men. So that is the explanation is within the culture of these people. Omogaka elder man, we have omongna elder woman, a so-called ancestor. I have explained that lexical gap to mean that women are given a raw deal on this one. Number 4, number 3 is address or reference terms, just examples. For male, we have omogaka, who must elderly and married, and also assured respect, even when they are not elderly, but somebody who is married, we normally refer them as omogaka to show respect. Omong the same. Omoiseke for gentleman, omoswati for lady. Omwanch, my love, can also be used in either way. But the term omoske, in the context of honorable, like a member of parliament, somebody who holds maybe a higher political position in society, you could call them omoske, but we do not have an equivalent for this. Maybe the word omospart could work. I do not have an explanation from my respondents for this one. We also use professional titles. If somebody is a teacher, you can say omwarimu buchi. So that's an example. If it's a teacher, and then you give the hotel. But even for professionals, for women, because women entered the professions recently, sometimes like a teacher, you get children saying like madam, which is like madam from English. So they want to show that she's not just a teacher. Teacher is for male. So they have something extra they use, like now they use the English, they adapt English for madam and say the Madam X, like Madam Mwango or Omwari Mwango or Mata Mwango. So that's very common because to express like, okay, teacher is for men, it's not actually for women. So because women just joined the profession recently. Table number 4 shows some of the reference terms which spouses use. Omogakone is like my husband. Omonginone could be my wife. They also use the pronoun without mentioning names. So in our culture, it's very uncommon for the husband or the wife to call their spouses by their name. It's not like today, Damaris will call me Johnathan. And I always call her Damaris, maybe because we are far away in Michigan, we're far away from our village. And I think you have to refer like I. But the question is, what if you are talking to somebody about your spouse? Then you want to say omugakone for my husband, omonginone for my wife. You can also call it isavana. Those are indirect way of mentioning referring to your wife. Isavana means the father of my children and things like that. Then there are several gaps here, 3 gaps. Look at the counterparts for the female. Mokane, my wife. That kind of structure, Mokane does not have a counterpart in there for the males. Omurugione, my wife, from Koruga to cook. Now, this is very important. These are one term which is very controversial. So when I say my wife, I can say Omurugione, like one who cooks for me. One of my respondents questioned about this. While cooking or preparing meals in this society is mainly done by women, mainly, it doesn't mean the word cook just refers to the actual cooking of the meal. It just it shows like most of the structure in this community, women are like within the domestic sphere. That's most of the activities, including cooking as a representative. That is a person's explanation, but cooking is the main one here. So if we have a professional wife, and maybe it's like the president of Tanzania, are you going to say President Hassan is a cook to his husband? I don't think it's going to apply. So those are terms like omurui are going to be controversial if they are applied wholesale in today. In fact, I don't use it at all. I've never used this omurui to refer to my wife. Omokungu, omonene, senior wife, omokungu omoke, omokungu omoke could mean a junior wife. So that's because men can have more than one wife. Number 5, occupational terms. I've mentioned them, teacher. We have to prefix the occupation, like mwalimu or teacher, omogambi, a leader, eruoti for king. So omogambi and eruoti, king and leader, traditionally these were all filled by men. So that's where we have the dashes on the female part. And the rest, they are shared. Now, I will talk about female names. I'm almost coming to the end of my talk. Given names, they have been corrupted today because Africans, including my people, we were meant to believe that European names and Arabic names are better. So they have really changed the structure of our given names in the society. So you see, I'm going by Johnathan. My given name is Nyabuto. And once I took up the name Johnathan, sadly, my given name Nyabuto disappeared. I am planning to change it soon in court and go back the way I began life, Nyabuto Choti. There's nothing wrong with our names. It's just that we were brainwashed to think that Johnathan is taking me to heaven. Oh, that's really, that's funny. So different given names for men, and we also have different, and for women. However, some names are gender neutral. Given names express and preserve a range of cultural meanings, each circumstances at birth, a parent's reaction or wish to the birth. Some names exhibit gender biases. They express society's perception on gender names. I have table 6 and 7 to show that. So when you look at the names on the left and the base, like where they are taken from, Magena, Getare, Ongera, Machogu, Monda, Simba, Monene, and Nyanguru. When you look at the meaning, they express like stones, rocks, buffalo, elephant, wealth, lion, big, older, strength. That's really like the masculinity, the perception about my people, about masculinity. When you look at the names for women and look at their base, the meaning, we have cowpeas, a vegetable, little, honey, goat, headscarf, quickness, colors. So they are really different semantically. They don't have show that so they also express some femininity in my culture about edible, about if it's a goat, like a harmless animal, domesticated. But when for men, we see like elephants, like the big 5 of the savannah in Africa. Number 8, Betratives. This is an inventory of, if you were to insult somebody in my language, which words are you going to use? Omokungu, woman, lass, your mother, elder woman, prostitute, my wife. A man can tell you another man, you are my wife. That's been insulting. Can you imagine? I wish you are my husband. No, if your woman is married and then for some reason, maybe before she doesn't go through divorce, because divorce is very uncommon in my community, but anyway, she moves out of the marriage and gets remarried. She will be labeled Ritinge, a woman who was initially married and has entered into a second marriage. So that's really something unexpected and very common. So the word Riting is insulting. Gender marked verbs. We have verbs in my language which are carry gender messages. Renta avanto, to marry. So somebody can ask you, hey Choti, quarent avant, have you brought people? You see now here, Okonyoma is for men. If my wife Damaris cannot say I married Johnathan, that's no. That's That's anomalous. That's not true. She can't say that. It's Johnathan who would say, I married Nanyo met Damaris. But Damaris would say, if she's married, na soka. Or soka to marry is for women, like to step out of their family, of their natal home. But if you want to say who married her, you're going to say na sokera Johnathan. So you have to bring the applicative, that's the grammar, the applicative here. So these verbs are going to require a unique syntax or the arrangement in the sentence where you give prominent to the male member, in a male person in that syntax or in that sentence. Vasa is to elope for women, soanyomba to inherit a widow, ega to woo somebody for especially marriage, okoega, koenda to imbricate somebody. This gives power to men. These verbs normally give power to men and the women powerless position. I'll bring you two sets of data for Swahili, and then I will cross. Swahili is spoken mainly in Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, and the islands of the Indian Ocean, some parts of Rwanda, Burundi, and the eastern DRC. Swahili, as we saw in Ekeusi, the grammatical gender nouns common in Bantu languages, plus human pronouns do not reflect for gender, like we say yeye, ake, and those can be used for any gender. So gender in pronouns in Swahili also are covert categories. They don't explicitly convey gender. But cultural context, as we saw in Ekeusi, can make a masculine gender term unmarked or generic. For example, I think babu is a borrowed item from Arabic, but it's now used as a Swahili item. Bab means ancestors, like this we saw in Ekeusi. It's derived from grandpa. Mwana means my child, but when you say mwanangu, it's now generically, it's used also for my son, for the male member of this community. Mwana mfalme, you can see a prince. So mwana here has taken a connotation of male when it means my child, basically. Proverbs, I have a few proverbs to show gender marked Swahili. Mke ni dada mdogo. A wife is your little sister. I wish it were like this. Our little sisters, like for my case, my little sister, we are very close. I have a soft spot for my little sister. Do I have the same spot for my wife? Yes, I do. I don't know about you. I don't know about you. If you treated your wife as a little sister, no domestic violence at all. Life will be like you are in heaven. Live about the ones we are talking about, we don't know. If you treat your wife as a little sister, you will win. Mke ni nguo, muomba kupalilia. A wife is clothing, a banana plant weeding. That's really okay. There's nothing wrong with the women looking nice. There's nothing wrong. Some people, they are spending a lot of money on clothing. That's okay. This way to know that. So men, give them those clothes they want, give them those gifts, or give them the cash to go and get the clothing. Number 5, mtu nyumbani mwake hatiwi na mkewe haoni kuwa mume asipompiga twa. Oh, this one is tough. A man is not obeyed by his wife in his own house. She does not consider him husband unless he beats her. Twak. This is really encouraging domestic violence. I don't like this proverb, and I hope nobody's going to use it. If you learned a proverb from my talk today and you take this one and use it, I won't like you to do that. I think this proverb is out of circulation among the Swahili. Number 6, mwanamke usimulegeze kamba. So do not leave all duties in your family, in your household for your wife. Not that because she can't, but because maybe you need both of you to make decisions. Mke mzuri halindwi. A beautiful woman is difficult to guard. Why should we guard them? Maybe she attracts attention to other men. I don't know what they mean here. I think that's the point. So if a beautiful woman is going to be guarded, what about a handsome man or a husband? So that's the gender imbalance here. Mtu halindi bahari patayo kila chombo is the same as 7 and 8, they are the same. A person does not guard the sea where every vessel passes. Here, the imagery here means if there's a woman out there, I don't know whether it's your wife or your fiance or your girlfriend, if every man in the neighborhood knows her, know in quotes, then there's no need of saying, where were you? Where were you last night? Where were you last weekend? Number 9, what about men? This is talking about women. We're talking about, what about the men here? Women jaha, si raha, being a husband is an honor. It's not a relaxation. Yeah, it's not just fun. Marriage is fun, yes, but there's work involved. Support your family. Get something on the table for them to eat. 10, mume si babe kwa mkewe. No man is a hero to his wife. That one means we should, just for us women in a family, we're not interested in your heroic deeds, man. We're interested with your duties as a husband, and you can list them, you know them. Read those, then I finish. Babu katupa sahani mbili, moja tuatumia, lakini moja atuitumii. Grandpa gave us 2 plates. One we use, the other we don't. What's the answer? Heaven and earth, they are the 2 plates. But who gave them to us? Grandpa. What does grandpa represent here? God. I hear God is male in some cultures. And their son, Jesus, is male too. I wonder where the sisters and the mothers went. Number 12, dume langu hunguruma tumboni. My man roars in the stomach or in the belly. Answer, milk bubbling in the gut is compared, or man is compared to this. So roaring, that bubbling is a quality given to masculine gender here. Number 12, mshale wangu umekita katika nyama na watafuta wazee waje kunitolea. My arrow is lodged in the meat. I am looking for the elders to come remove it for me. Whew. A young man who has found a fiancé to marry is going to ask the elders to initiate marriage negotiations. Guys, I'm almost done. Muongo wa bibi mchafu. Grandpa's back is dirty. Answer, a pot with soot. Why should we compare that to a grandma? Maybe because a pot, what she uses in the kitchen. Number 14, bibi kizee katupwa jalalani. An elder grandpa thrown in the trash. Answer, coconut dregs. So women, when they are old, they look like coconut dregs. What about the men? Summary and conclusion. Actually, it's conclusion, not summary. The data I have here, and I can share more if they have questions and you want to say, the structure of both Ekeusi and Swahili exhibit gender neutrality and biases. So both, you can see them in the material I shared with you. The linguistic structures in both languages favor male members. Biases in the linguistic structure in the 2 languages align with the biases in the socio-cultural reality today or then. Some of the biased linguistic forms are not in circulation today, and so they have undergone natural, languages undergo natural change, and that's okay. Thus, changes in socio-cultural processes trigger changes in language structure. So they go hand in hand. Socio-cultural changes and the language changes, they go hand in hand. Language users should be conscious about changes in gender roles and the language structure so that they can use their languages accordingly. I referred to very nice, very important materials here I wanted to share with you. Violence against women in African oral literature as portrayed in Proverbs by Ayanga. I got some materials from my master's thesis, a teacher at the university in 1998. And I got some materials from the Maris Choti. Where did the girls go? The role of socialization and institutions in silencing female voices. Faras was a very important reading for me. Faris, 1988, Gender and Grammar in Chinese. Otiso's Spora, I got some proverbs from Ekeusi proverbs from our work of 1926, examining the indigenous wisdom in Ekeusi proverbs, University of Nairobi. Syllabus Scheme 1999 and 2001 This is a powerful author about Ekeusi. If you have time, please read and interested more about the culture of the Wusi people. I recommend Silima Skemet 99 and 2001. The readers I used from Swahili, I took them from Taasisi ya Uchunguzi wa Fasihi Chuo Kikuu cha Dar es Salaam, Fasihi Simulizi ya Mtanzania na Vitendawili. Wolf Benjamin is a very important authoritative work on language, thought, and reality. I acknowledge the contribution made to this work by Professor Justice Ogembo, Dr. Kennedy Mungare Onyanja, and Dr. Damaris Mora Choti for their insightfulness in discussing some of the Ekeusi data used in this work. Thank you, audience. Once again, thank you, Dr. Sa, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Johnathan. And if you have questions, you can type them in the Q&A section, or you can raise your hand and be allowed to talk. We have 2 questions. Somebody wants to know what is the female equivalent term for abagaka?
That one, the I is singular, va means many, abagaka will be abangina.
And Philip said, thank you for your interesting presentation. In many indigenous religions, the gods were either male or female or not gendered. However, in religions like Christianity, for instance, we say, our Father who are in heaven. What are your thoughts on Chapter Center's religious designation?
Thanks, Philip, for that question. In fact, you see, when the data I presented, there was no linguistic item referring to our god or gods, traditional gods of the Abagusi of Kenya. But in the Christian, Christianity is not African. Christianity is foreign, and it's a culture of some people elsewhere. And they succeeded to market it to other parts of the world, including Africa. And though we are spreading their story, that's not an African story. So Christianity, it's like I could go out there to the Middle East or Europe and tell them to take up choti, to eat ugali, eat my food, and do things like that. If I succeed, well and good, but whatever my intentions. So God, as you said clearly, in African traditional religion, we could have gods being male and a female, as expected. They have to have some gender or whatever. But in the culture Christianity, which is not African, everything is male. So if I were to do a gender analysis on the Christian faith, of course, you know where I belong. There are so many questions I have about God being male and Christ being his son and Mary being a virgin. I don't want to go that discussion, but that's a great question, Philip. And any Christian listening could start analyzing that story. And where Eve was talking with serpents, and Adam was out there enjoying walking in the park, and Eve being the first sinner. I won't stop there, Philip, but that's a great question related to the material, the topic I was considering today. Alhambra.
Hey, Mwalimu Choti. It's really nice to hear your work. I unfortunately didn't catch all of it due to some other conflicting meetings, but I wanted to make sure that I could access the recording. Do you know where it's going to live?
Dr. Sar, do you want to respond to that question about the recording?
Yeah, so the recording will be in the African Studies website. If you go there, you're going to see in Africa. If you click, you'll see the information.
And Alondra, once we receive the recording, I can share with you. Thanks, and thanks for showing up.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Say hi to Damaris for me.
I will. Good to see you in your voice. Jen Wushi.
Hi, Doc.
Hi, Jen.
I must appreciate this great talk that you presented.
Welcome.
It's of great interest to me because I'm one of those people that are out to defend Ekegusi language and Ekegusi community for that matter. There's an article that I had read about a woman's place in the world of a man. Then I put this against a woman's place in the world of a Kisi man. So in this article, the author talks about a woman's place being just a designated place, a small space in the house, for example, or in the world, but a man takes the whole world. So it's not surprising because even in the Bible, when the writers talk about Jesus feeding 5,000 people, they add a phrase excluding women and children. So in your presentation, you emphasized on the gender biases, especially on the side of the women. That is how men view women. They designate them to a small space in the community or in the society, but they take a greater portion. For instance, they couldn't bother when they were creating the language, couldn't bother to get some words for women, but they just assigned words for men only. When I looked at the chat side, some viewers were getting worried as to what kind of community this Gusi community is. I must come to the defense of the community by saying that maybe you couldn't look at both sides of the society. You simply highlighted on the Proverbs that talk about the gender biases, the bad side only. That is designating the female or the woman to that small space. But we must note that women and the children being a vulnerable group, and this is a fact that was recognized or is recognized in the society, they are given special care and attention. So there are positions that were laid down so that they could protect this vulnerable group. For example, a pregnant woman was not allowed to eat chicken. She could not be allowed to eat the inside meat or the offal of a cow or an animal. So giving birth, for example, was, giving birth to girls only in this community was not regarded as something that was honorable. Until a woman or a wife bore boys, that's when she could be respected. But all in all, there were deeds and there were names, for example, that were given to women, and this marked respect. For example, a woman could be called Nginabantu. That is mother of human beings or mother of the community. So I had commented that next time, maybe when you have an opportunity, just highlight on the good side of the community or the good views that the community has towards women. Usitumalize sana. In other words, defend the community so that people maybe don't feel that we are so much biased against the women. So when a girl is born, for example, or when a child is born, the first thing that people
we lost Jen's voice. That's unfortunate. You were making very great points. Jen, are you still there? Now, as we wait for Jen to come back on air, I want to respond briefly to what she said. She's actually right. Except I want to remind her that when I began my talk, I even showed an example, one of data number 2, I think, where the cultural context promotes women. When you say, abantu bane, my people, you can just say that to your wife, even if they are not children. Just abantu bane, these are my people. And I said, women in that context of family, you cannot get a social status among the Gusi people if you are not married. If you are married, they promote your social status. And when you get children, your social status goes higher and higher. And I said about a family or one who has girls or ones, you can't lack a sponsor. And I explained that proverb in the context of where the positive contribution of women. And I gave an example of my mother, whereby that proverb I critiqued it when you say omusacha oremwaye neritiro ryenyumba, like the man is the pillar of the house. And then I say it could depend on the context. And they said, when we lost our dad in our family, my mom raised us, 7 of us successfully, very successfully. And then I'm saying, like, she not changed from woman to man. And there are many examples in my conclusion. I also said the language structure, Ekeusi, and even Swahili, whose data I did not provide a lot of data. The language, the data I presented, a lot of it is symmetrical, like women have their position. The few examples where showing biases, there are few, and there's nothing really wrong about that. Maybe they point out the fact on the ground. The language aligns with the culture. It's taking as the perception, just like what she said about Christ and God being male, and what can only promote Mary to give birth to Jesus is being a virgin. So virginity for them is a good thing. Some people, virginity is not a good thing. And why? It has to be a woman who has to be a virgin. So when you see this and see the Bible, see our culture, and this is what makes the human race a human race. That we, the people, we constitute one human race. There's a lot of commonality in terms of social cultural practices, our norms and values, and the language comes in to reflect those things. But still, there are changes. And unfortunately, they could be changing the Bible, but there are some stories they can't change. So Mary will remain Virgin Mary, Jesus will remain her son, feeding miraculously thousands of people. And why in our culture is the women who feed us. So there are so many questions. Jen, are you back? Let me go to the questions. Yes. Jen, are you there?
Yes.
Did you want to sum up? You were making a very good contribution.
Thank you so much, Doc. So I think you have clarified some of the issues that I would have raised. You must have mentioned them at the beginning because I was, I think, 10 minutes late. So society, as we have realized, as or the world, the world generally divides people into sexes. Society has decided, and we see society not excluded, has decided to divide the world by sexes. So women have their place, men have the entire world, as I was saying. So if, for example, you look at the secular music from Wusi, you can realize that there is a way that they present the women. Maybe they have taken advantage of that because we don't have so many women. In fact, if we have any, they may not be more than 2. We don't have women that have composed and sang those secular music. So the men have taken advantage and they are coming out to ridicule, in quotes, women. They call them, for example, materialistic, or they portray them as materialistic, luring. And that is where, from one proverb in Nkoc, it says, in other words, women are very much alluring. They can entice males and mislead them. And this is an idea, I think, that has crept into the world of politics and the governance. And interestingly, it's not easy for a woman to win an election in Nkoc land unless one is nominated.
Yeah, Mary, Jen, do you want to conclude so they can answer other questions, then we can come back to you, if you don't mind.
I think I've concluded, Doc.
Thanks so much, and thanks for joining all the way from Kenya, Eldoret in Kenya. Annie Rutomia is asking, how do you think the Nkoc spoken in the US by the Wusi community is in the diaspora might differ from the one spoken in Kenya. Thanks, Anne, for the question. But I was looking at the structure of the language, the phrases, the proverbs, the riddles, things which are fixed, the grammar, not the grammar mostly, but the lexical items and the meanings behind those, the structure, those elements of the structure of the AKOC. I wasn't looking at the language spoken, but because my children speak AKOC in here in Michigan, in the US, this is different for sure because they don't have enough data, and the competition between AKOC in my house and the English on TV and the social media, the media and the school system, and they are in the neighborhood. So they don't have enough data to give, and the contexts to give them to acquire competently our language. So that's why we plan to take them back to Kenya frequently, so that they can go and interact with the people of different ages, get more data, in contextualized data, and improve their AKOC. But for those who came to the US, when we are 18 and above, after the language is the grammar is well developed, like my case, my AKOC is as intact as it was when I was 18. And so, but because the language changes, I'm very sure, like Jane was talking about, there are so many changes taking place back home in the among the speech community. And I might not be aware because I spend most of my time in Michigan. And so there could be differences. And the other question is from my teacher, Professor Njeru. In today's context, where there is more move towards equality or equity, social justice, is it fair to continue to use some of the proverbs that seem unfair to women? That's part of my goal in sharing this data. And I said clearly in my concluding remarks that some of the forms, some of the structures in our languages, like the one I shared, they might be irrelevant in today. And let me tell you, if you went to Kisii, live with them, attend public gatherings, in family, informal gatherings, some of these proverbs, you are not going to hear them, even if you stayed with that community for a year or two. So by the history and the books written and recording these proverbs, this is a rich history. So even if things have gone by, they have gone by, proverbs or language structures can be a rich source of history and our culture in terms of time. So by talking about them, it doesn't mean we are promoting them. It doesn't mean we are changing. But still remember, the two sexes exist. The two main sexes. And their roles are there, well defined. They might mix, but still they are going to be, society is going to structure us into the two roles. But you are right. Is it fair? It's fair to talk about them though, as part of, because time is very important. During the times of our mother or our fathers, those messages were relevant. And even today, those messages are still there recorded for posterity. So we need to talk about them. Mwalimu Deongonyani, given the prominence of males in the languages you have discussed, do you know if there is a parallel prominence in matrilineal societies in Africa? Along matrilineal societies such as people in Tanzania, Mozambique, and Malawi, married men moved to their women's household, properties inherited by women. These are only examples of the manifestation of the prominent position of the women. I had that question in mind, Professor Ngonyani, when I was preparing this talk, and because I was focused on AKOC, which is patrilineal. The wife, upon marriage, the wife goes to live with the family of the husband, and so the language, that movement, and she takes up the surname of the husband, and those are things I did not have time to talk about. So I would presume that in matrilineal societies in Africa, the opposite is the same case, or a mixture of both. But the point I want to emphasize is this. Nature is systematic, being male and female. Societies will inherit those dichotomies and give them roles depending on the society. So maybe the matrilineal societies will give those roles in the way they want, but I'm sure there will be some changes as well. I don't know when they're in a matrilineal society, when a husband moves to live with their wife's family and the wife inherits wealth, I don't know whether the husband changes the name to take the surname of the wife. And that would be interesting. And it says more study, our work there to be done by people in the relevant disciplines. Ishak, treating wives as our little sisters would be beautiful and nice. Please, does this stance put women in an equal power position with men or relegate them to the background if you treated them? I think, Ishak, you're talking about if we treated our wives as our little sisters. But let me add more information to that proverb. And I think all proverbs we use as examples for the gender dynamics in our societies. Remember, your wife is your wife and your sister is your sister. They occupy different roles in society or in the family. So of course, there's no way they are going to be equal. But if you were to treat, your wife as your little sister, this is a proverb, this is a lesson, this is counsel, which will be provided to a person who is maybe too mean to their wife. So this is a situational advice, like treat her like your younger sister. Be nice, but it doesn't mean the dynamics change. And I continue repeating. Nature is structured, and so are societies. Human societies are structured. We even give power in democracies to one person. This person can be sick at night without the country knowing, and they finish the whole people in the world. So there are some things we need to apply in terms of how are we structured as society. It comes to our males. Domestic violence shouldn't even arise if people were to question basic things. Domestic violence are not an answer. People continue practicing it because maybe when they were young, they inherited that practice. It's never a solution. Violence is not, to me, it's a negative thing. So if this teaching of treating your younger sister as your wife as a younger sister, it doesn't mean you are taking away the power dynamics. But power dynamics, again, is a controversial situation. But thanks for that question, Ishak. Anonymous attendee. Being that we have been colonized and still dealing with the implications of colonization, how can we delineate what is truly authentically Nkoc versus what we have taken out from our colony? Thanks, the anonymous attendee. I was talking about language, really. I wasn't talking about, there's a lot of, even the language I'm using is a legacy of colonialism. I was not born speaking this language. Though a product of colonialism and the world now, things have changed so quickly. Yeah, you are right. But the data I provided had nothing to do with colonialism. Okay, this is really something which is, language is really a basic cultural aspect of culture in a community. And there are some things which can change in the structure of the language. The meanings and the grammar will remain the same. So I did not have any English words, for example, in that data I shared. All of that was Swahili and Nkoc, the grammar and the lexicon. Everything was Nkoc. So there were no issues here. I was only analyzing the data in those two languages, the traditional original data. Jenny Alson is asking, are there examples of newer proverbs that might illustrate changes in gender roles? I wish, that's a good one. I don't know whether the communities are still inventing new proverbs and see how they are capturing the gender dynamics. Maybe that could be on my next step in gathering data about new proverbs. I don't know whether we have proverbs belong to the old generation when the language was created, and so proverbs were created. And but I know during colonialism there are proverbs which refer to the colonial periods. But that's a good question, Jenny. I will find out. And Jennifer, Obuchi Jane, please let me know if we have new proverbs among the Usi back there at home. Esther Milu, Dr. Milu, thank you. I was so delighted, she's saying, to see you talk about Proverbs, a critical genre in the teaching of cultural knowledge and the history of African cultures. The examples you offered made me wonder how damaging teaching Proverbs can be for African society today. Because Proverbs are still taught in African schools, should we consider teaching them as they are, or should teachers and students work to come up with new Proverbs that Jane was talking about that empower all genders? Good question and good comments, but I would say this is my personal perspective. We should teach colonialism the same way we teach the Holocaust. We shall teach our children tomorrow after Ukraine. We should talk about colonialism. We should talk about dark and bright historical events. How you want to approach, what message, the importance you want to assign those events. Maybe it will depend on how you are trained and what the objectives of your lesson are. All of these things are good. These proverbs which show negativity, and the negative is not on the one gender alone. No. So it depends on the message you want to take. Maybe study those the proverbs well, understand the messages and how the role of proverbs in society. They're not just listed there to be crammed into our minds. They are supposed there to show us how the thinking power behind the proverbs, the relationship they bring between the genders, and historically, even if you don't, we are not going to teach our kids so they can apply them. But remember, the language is going to reflect the facts on the ground today. So even if you teach proverbs which are outdated, just for historical sake, and to our languages have changed, natural changes in culture are going to render them irrelevant. Jane, just a minute before I come to you, I have Kerry here. Could you please talk about lack of language and the several meanings one word could have in various contexts? Lack of language, Kerry, I don't get it. Do you want to ask your question? Yeah, you go ahead.
Johnathan, I just wanted to thank you for the presentation. I guess what I'm saying is that most of the words that are being used in those proverbs, sometimes one word could mean, 5, 6 meanings in the context upon which they are used on. And for that reason, they don't have enough, I believe that there's not enough terms or words that are being used so that they can actually be differentiated. Because sometimes people can say, something, if you don't take the context of it, you may not understand what it means. And I was thinking that when those proverbs that are being used, some of them are gender biased, but there is also a lot that you can learn from them. Unless you understand the language, sometimes those proverbs, especially the one you presented, there are some that I've never seen. And I grew up in Kisii, and I should claim myself to know enough Kisii. But there are some of them I've never seen. Unless you have some context, those proverbs, sometimes they don't make much sense.
Yeah, and I think thanks for Kerry. You're right, but what I was saying is, as I said earlier about semiotics in language and the science in relation to other science, that was, I didn't have time to give, to go into the specific data I shared, like the proverbs, look at the words in each proverb. We don't have time to do that, but all the proverbs I shared, I discussed with the respondents and some of the people I thanked, like Onyancha and Professor Ogembo. I give people these proverbs to interpret word by word and the context. And so that's part of our work, what we do when you are collecting data to transmit knowledge. So, but the words in Proverbs, they have to be, they are not going to be ambiguous, unless they say we miss the meaning of a word in a given proverb. So language users are competent, and those who devised the proverbs were native speakers of the language, full of the culture. So we trust what they have recorded for us. So we are not going to miss the point. If we did, then too bad. But what I want to emphasize is like the proverbs and the messages have no problem. They might be recording what happened in those days, and the proverbs are out to teach or to record what perceptions, our thoughts, our ideas about gender issues in our society. If they are outdated, that's okay. But we need to know how things were in the past. And what is not relevant, we leave it out. And what is relevant, we do. But still, human society will determine human society. We are going to have these structures. We are going to have this friction, and the language comes in to show us some of these changes, positive or negative.
And I want to thank you again, I guess, for this. And I was just kind of guiding this to those non-Kisi speakers who sometimes could look at some of those languages and the proverbs and translations and think that, man, how are you guys so negative to the, female gender? Anyway, thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Craig. But still, negativity is part and parcel of human society. At least it's in the language. How many people go out there and met violence on innocent societies? So let us not look at language and start punishing language. Human behavior is well known, well documented. Watch TV today. Talk about Arabs moving to Africa or Europeans going to Africa and what they did. How many millions died? How many people's languages are being destructured and being lied to about us dropping our languages? So we have facts, except unless you want to pretend and focus on one small thing. So we have to be aware about the changes in our history, in our societies, so that we can inform others the right information. Kemunto, your hand is up, and then Jen. Kemunto, are you still there? Jen?
Thank you. Thank you so much. This is Kemunto.
Oh, Kemunto, yes. Go ahead.
I've been following your discussion from Kenya, Nairobi, and I've said that it's a very illuminating presentation. When it took a while for me to be given permission, I wrote my message there via chat. And I'm saying that language is very powerful, especially in influencing, especially aspects of participation in leadership. And I've given that example of the term homogambi. Once you utter that term somewhere, people will be expecting that you are making reference to a man. And that has really influenced how women participate in leadership aspects, not only in Kenya, in the Pagusi community, but generally in Africa. So I'm agreeing to a very large extent that what you are saying is actually accurate, but you may also recognize that some aspects are changing as women also start to assert themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Kemunto. You're right. And I think the change was part of my goals, and it's also spoken to in my concluding remarks about change, language change, and how languages change naturally to accommodate the changes in society. And that's really what's part of my message is that as far as some of these forms in language exist somewhere, sometimes we even rarely use them, whether they're words, whether phrases or proverbs, but still they record for us perceptions or thoughts from the past. And the thoughts from the past are also important for today to measure and see how far we have come or we have traveled. But we might not say that, okay, this is for the past. Not really. It depends on where you are taking it and what message you're going to extract from there and for what objective. Jen, you are still there. Your hand is up. Do you want to say something? Jen Yobuchi.
Yes, Doc. Yes. I'm enjoying every bit of this presentation. I think it's because I have so much interest, as I indicated earlier, in Ekekusi. So somebody was talking about revising the Proverbs. And the answer I can give is that we cannot revise these Proverbs, not even the songs or a chingero, not even the phrasal verbs and all that, because if we
Dr. Sir, what's going on? Did we lose Jen?
Jen, can you hear us?
Yes, yes, I'm back.
Okay.
So we decided to revise these proverbs, then we will have changed the history of that given people. Because it's not only the words that are in the proverbs, we have the language itself, then there is a message that is communicated through those proverbs. And in any case, for proverbs, they were not meant to be comprehended by anybody in society. They were meant to communicate some hidden meaning to a group of people. For example, there is one proverb that talks about, that refers to women as a good harp that can be played so well. Mokungu muya inigango obokanobo tingire. A good woman is like a harp that is tied so well and it can produce good music. So this music, the music, we have the literal meaning of the music. At the same time, this woman will bring happiness into the family, will make the husband happy. In any case, the duty of a wife is to make the husband happy, entertain guests, give birth, and take care of the home.
Excellent, man.
So I've written, as we had said, and as Doc had emphasized, we cannot criticize all these practices because every society has structures in place to govern that particular society. So if we change the proverbs or the phrasal verbs and the chingero, that is the folk songs, then we will have created a different society altogether. What we do is to retain those initial proverbs or initial phrasal verbs, and then later on, with the time, as the demand can be, then we can revise them, maybe not during our time. Before I sign off, with your permission, Daktari, let me say that I've done a compilation of Chingero Chiabagusi, that is Ekegusi folk songs. I've done a dictionary of phrasal verbs, and Abaseye Chingwana Chekegusi. And you can Google, I've written a paper on the gender biases in the language used by Kisi classical musicians, Monyonja and Arisi, as case studies. And let me blow my own trumpet by saying that I succeeded in translating Romeo and Juliet into Ekegusi, and the things fall apart among other books. I will remarry when I want, The River Between, and so many others. Thank you so much. I'm proud to be a Kisi woman. Thank you, Doctor.
Thanks so much, Jen Omuch, and thanks for your insights as well. And I know the good work you are doing, continue doing it. We need to collaborate. And there's a question Jenny had asked, like, if we have new proverbs, how do they portray the gender, the two genders? And so, Jenny, I'll stay in touch with you. We need to further this kind of work. And thanks for your comments. That's really, really nice. Audience, we're almost coming to the end of our talk. Our talk was to end 1:30. Thanks, Samuel Okech from Uganda for tuning in. And thanks everyone for staying for the full time of 1.5 hours. And thanks for honoring the invitation to join with us. We are not perfect on my perspective. If there's anything that not go well, to not get very good messages which didn't come out well, that's human nature. Thanks so much. Back to you, Dr. Saab.
Thank you, Jonathan. We can just end. Jen also wrote in the Q&A, things do change. One of my favorite revised proverbs in the US is, a woman's place is in the house and the Senate. So now you have that thing added, not just the house, but also the Senate. So thank you, Jonathan, and thank you everybody for coming. We're gonna take a break next week during spring break, and we will be back with another Eye on Africa on the 17th. Thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful day or night, depending on where you are. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.